Good afternoon, friends. This is 2021 and it's March 27th, and the Regenera Festival is winding down. That was the topic of my last video and the video before, also. And now I'm on the theme of spring. We've passed the spring equinox, and traditionally, this is a time to do what's called spring cleaning. Like, I just cleaned out my refrigerator. It's all sparkling and nice inside now. I found some leftover Bloody Mary mix, which I think it's time to consume, be done with. That's the feeling, tie off loose ends, clean stuff up. In the geek world, I call the Bloody Mary actually a headless chicken, because in the early days, what a geek was someone so down on their luck that as a circus sideshow act, they would bite the head off a live chicken. Not a great way to earn a living, but sometimes with the drink they put like two little olives that look like eyes and stuff. And anyway, headless chicken, it's not as pretty as Bloody Mary, but think about it, Bloody Mary isn't very pretty either. So anyway, theme is spring and spring cleaning. And I thought, hey, it's time to spruce up Wikipedia some. Like my Quadray's page, there's a lot of people who worked on it. I don't think they all need to be named because it could be a long list. So let's put Daryl Jarmusch as a developer and then others, right? So then you can jump in and be one of those others at any time, not feel left out. And I added another animated GIF at the bottom. I've released this into the public domain now so far as Wikipedia is concerned. Okay, so it looks pretty much the same otherwise. I added some sentences here. But then we connect to Synergetics. And here, not only have I added this picture to the right, with Synergetics 2 prominently in the foreground, Your Private Sky to the right, Synergetics Dictionary to the left, I've done some significant rephrasing of this page. Now, I think it will help to give you some context. It was almost just a stub page when I first came to it, and it was unclear whether Haken, who also wrote a book called Synergetics, and Fuller were going to have their separate pages, because maybe the job was to somehow synergize or synthesize both Haken's work and Fuller's work and make some kind of amalgam that would be Synergetics going forward, where Bucky would be like one of the instigators and so forth. Now, what I learned from Applewhite is, to the best of my recollection, Fuller was not particularly pleased that Haken was going to jump on that same title. There's nothing you can really do about it. Titles cannot be copyrighted. I think I could write a book called Dianetics and get away with it. Although I would hesitate to do so, right? Because of attempts to stop me. But Synergetics, we're not playing hardball here in terms of only one person in the world can use the word, obviously. And I know Haken was aware of Fuller's work, but does he perpetuate it? Does he continue it? Does he talk about S modules or E modules? In other words, is Haken's Synergetics a continuation of Fuller's, or does he just pay lip service to Fuller's and then move on with his own stuff? And my assessment is he pretty much just goes on with his own stuff, and that Fuller, who had ample time and overlap with Haken to point out their collaboration and talk about how their work dovetailed, I don't get any of that from Fuller. So I think the goal of trying to synthesize Haken's work and Fuller's work because they use the same title, that there's a need now to bring those two together into one discipline. I don't think we should feel bullied to do that. I think we can treat it as a coincidence that they use the same title, and I think we can follow each Synergetics where it leads, which is why it's good that each one has its own Wikipedia page. Because what Fuller is up to in Synergetics, I don't think is all that compatible or all that in the same direction as really what anyone else is doing. And it's not a problem to let somebody just be themselves, like James Joyce, for example. We don't have to look over his shoulder and find the typos in Finnegan's Wake, right? And Synergetics isn't quite like Finnegan's Wake, and we can find obvious mistakes and do. There are things that can be corrected in Synergetics, but it's not something where until we've all come to some kind of agreement about what Synergetics is as a discipline that is inclusive of anyone who's written about it, we're not waiting for that point before we can talk about and synopsize and give an impression of what Fuller's contribution was. Kind of, I won't say in a vacuum, but freestanding on his own without the requirement that we do some kind of creative synthesis in an encyclopedia context to create a new discipline. That's specifically what they don't want you to do on Wikipedia, is do original stuff, like make up new ideas and pass them off as widely accepted. On the contrary, in sticking to the books, Synergetics and Synergetics 2, and pretty much making those the focus, I think I've cleaned it up a lot. And I was bold enough. Now I've documented all this on the talk page. I've been very active just in the last couple of days making these changes, and I've left discussion here as to what I'm up to. But we had some unsightly, like broom sweep icons at the top of the article that said the tone was maybe not consistent with Wikipedia's, and maybe the stuff was too technical, let's go over people's heads. And yeah, if we're trying to define a new discipline ab initio where we synergize Haken and Fuller, that would be kind of highbrow. I think higher brow than an encyclopedia should be into. But now that that goal has, I think, been properly shelved, and we're just looking at Synergetics as published by Fuller in collaboration with Ed Applewhite, don't need to worry about Haken stuff. I think the tone has shifted enough that with hope, I have deleted those tone police icons, and let's see if the powers that be agree that this article is now pretty straightforward, doesn't have the problems that it did. I could be wrong. Also, I've added to the volumes table here, because at the core of Synergetics, I think we have to agree, is a construct, a conceptual apparatus called the concentric hierarchy. And the table, as of a couple days ago, that I created originally for this article, did not have the E modules separately listed, nor the S module, and I was not giving volumes in terms of phi before. And we have specifically, especially nice formulations for these modules, their volumes, in terms of phi, thanks to David Koski, in part. And I have not mentioned David Koski here anywhere because I'm assuming like an invisible army of researchers here. Like, I don't want to start listing who the researchers are who get along with Synergetics, because I'm going to assume that, this becomes somewhat common knowledge in certain curricula. Like, once it becomes sort of background knowledge, part of cultural literacy, the concentric hierarchy in particular I'm talking about, then it's not practical to like list all the people who know about the concentric hierarchy. I would assume any competent sixth grader kind of thing. So no need for long lists of who's doing work in Synergetics right now. Let's just assume there are such people. I'm one of them, and you're welcome to join us. Okay, so I'm scrolling through this article because I don't know how much change is going to be inflicted on it in the future, and I think it's kind of useful to get sort of a sense of where we were in March of 2021. For context, what's happening at this time in history is we have a blocked Suez Canal thanks to a ship that's really packed with containers there, and it's jammed in semi-sideways. Things are looking pretty bleak at the moment. I'm sure they'll figure it out. And shout out to Mid-Century Advertising Channel. I've been bringing forward a lot of advertisements, but here is a place on Facebook, for example, not only in the talk section of the Wikipedia, but in the Facebook context, I'm talking to CJ and Mark and people who are stakeholders in the Synergetics write-up and sort of building agreement consensus for at least understanding for what it is I'm up to in trying to make this page easier to grapple with. So I'm trying to cover my bases and sort of file my flight plans with others who are also invested. By the way, I think we are finally down to where the math forum, which looked like it was going to continue in some kind of abbreviated form, has truly been swallowed up into the NCTM website and never again to sort of distill out. So when we go back to caltrop coordinates or quadrays, which I have linked from the bottom of Synergetics, Quadray coordinates, you'll see that my page on quadrays, my banner, which used to be at the math forum, I've had to go back to the archival copy. In other words, archive.org shows us what in the golden age of the math forum it looked like to come across my Quadray coordinates in that context, right? It looked like this. NCTM logo, math forum, so forth. I don't think you'll be able to find that going forward, except here in the archives. All right, nice to chat with you guys, and drop me a line if there's something I should know.